Hello and welcome. My name is Errity Green. I'm a spiritual empowerment mentor, and this is our virtual summit, Raising New Earth, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World. My presentation and talk today is on finding meaning and moving forward through crisis. And I wanted to share on this because so often we can find ourselves in challenging times or situations or experiences, and we can get stuck there. And these kinds of experiences can hold us back from what we truly want and what is meant for us and what is available for us for our life experience. And then also piggybacking on that, how in these kinds of experiences, when things become challenging or emotionally difficult or emotionally overwhelming, we can find ourselves in a position where again we get held back and we're unable to move forward. We continue to get stuck in the emotional experience or in the emotional body, and we don't actually move forward in any shape, form, or capacity. When in truth, in crisis, most of the time, what builds momentum, what serves and supports is, yes, holding our pain, being with our pain, but also allowing ourselves to thrive in our pain, to thrive in difficult experiences, to thrive during challenging times. That we're never truly meant to suffer and stay there and pack up our bags and live in a place of suffering. That even through crisis, we can live our best life. And maybe it won't look the way it does when things are really great, but our life can be, to whatever degree in those times, it can be happy or it can be joyful. At the very least, you can find gratitude in your moments. I know for me, some of the most difficult times that I've had have also been some of the deepest, slowest, most savory and satisfying times of my life, because it slowed everything down, brought everything back to the body, back to the earth, and it brought me and everyone else who was experiencing what I was experiencing, let's say like a loss of a family member or something. It reminds us and brings us back to what is most important, which is love, our relationships, each other, our homes and families. So pain doesn't have to be, or doesn't have to correlate or cause suffering. And even if it is suffering, it doesn't have to last forever. So I thought it was really important to support everybody who watches on how to find meaning in these kinds of times, especially an era like this where there is and has been a lot of crisis, a lot of challenge. And as we transition into the new, and as we're letting go of these old societal structures and systems, and as the earth experiences changes in itself through the kinds of disasters that we've seen over the last 10 years, 20 years, there will and more likely or may likely be more. And if that's the case, we need to know, how do we navigate these times? And that's truly how this summit came up anyways. How can we navigate through these transitions, through these challenges, and continue to move forward? And number one, we do it together. And number two, we do it through the tools that I'm going to share with you and offer today, and that you'll discover through all of the presentations and talks that you experience with this summit. So finding meaning. How do we find meaning? As I sat with this and sat with this concept or inspiration for this talk specifically, and I meditated, what I found within my own experience that was self-evident for me when I looked back over the course of my life, I recognized that some of the most difficult experiences stayed with me, and some of them did not. Most of them did not. I moved through them, didn't look back, moved forward, and even though it was something extremely difficult like loss or injury or car accident or train wreck accident and all the things that I've experienced, some of those things didn't stick with me. So it might be a part of my history, and it formed who I am, and it's built character and strength and resilience, but it didn't cause me pain or suffering in the long run. It wasn't baggage that I was actively burdened by or carrying every day. And so I looked back and I asked myself, well, what is it or why or how is it that some things we carry with us and some things we don't? And what came through around this talk specifically to share with you is that those pains that we experience, even those traumatic experiences that we have, if we can find a way to alchemize it, if we can give it purpose, if we can put it toward a cause, we can alchemize that pain. If we give our pain purpose, we shift that, what could be heavy energy, what could be a burdensome feeling or pain or suffering that just sits with us, we give it something so that it can be used as fuel for good. So it can be used as fuel for what we truly desire for ourselves and for the world. So looking back at your own experiences, I encourage you right now, if you have a journal or a piece of paper on hand, I would suggest using that. If not, go ahead and pause and do that. That way we can do the work of pondering and looking back on your life at some of the pains that have happened and gone by the wayside. Simply, right, earth sort of just happening. The wind blows and things keep going and life keeps going and changes happen and we've moved on and beyond it, and it's a non-issue. There's no charge, it's neutral, it's a part of our story, it's a part of our character and who we are today, but it causes us no pain. And then look back at some of the pains or challenges that have been so extreme or so difficult that you might still carry with you. How you might know if you're still carrying it is there still an emotional charge? Is there still an upset there? Does it still bring tears to your eyes? Now, there are some pains that last a lifetime, and I think that's a part of the human experience. And while we sit here and do this work, we don't have to endeavor to eliminate or get rid of or make all disappear things that have been challenging or difficult. Again, it informs who we are. It gives us depth and richness to our lives and meaning to our experience. And it gives us ways to give back. So it's not like we're just getting rid of all of this stuff and goodbye it goes. It's just a matter of if it's causing us pain and suffering, there is an opportunity for alchemy. And it doesn't mean the pain goes away forever, that the emotional charge disappears forever. Sometimes it does, and that's wonderful. However, what it means is if you give it purpose, your life can be meaningful, can be rich, can be joyful anyway. So even if the pain doesn't go away, and oftentimes it does, so that's the good news. When we give our pain purpose, it can go away. But more often than not, we're just able to find and make peace with it. And that we're able to carry it in a way that it serves and supports us and serves and supports those around us, instead of it weighing us down and burdening us and causing and creating suffering in our inner experiences and our outer lives. So go ahead, reflect for a moment here, pause if you have to, on looking back on those experiences that might still be lingering and hanging with you. And trust your own judgment and authority here. Whatever is meant to come through and be acknowledged are those things that will come through and be acknowledged. Again, those things that have sort of come and gone with the wind, those things sometimes we don't even remember. We go to share a life story and we totally gloss over it, and then 2 hours later we're like, I cannot believe I forgot to tell someone about such and such or so and so, right? It was such a big experience. Then again, if it's not still lingering and being dwelt on or being hooked into, it's more than likely something that you've healed from or made peace with, and it served you and supported you in some way, either you in your own life experience or some kind of contribution. You've given it purpose. Now for this exercise, I don't encourage you to look at the most painful experience in your past, the most challenging and traumatic thing that has caused any mental health disruption or dysfunction. Save those for your work with a trained professional, teacher, a mentor, a counselor, a therapist. Save those for someone who can support you in a very safe space. Let's take a look at those things that you know you can navigate on your own with my support and the shared support of this community and this summit, but no need to dive into our darkest holes at this moment. Let's focus on those things that we know and trust ourselves and feel empowered enough to look at and work with. So now that you have pinpointed those experiences, challenges, painful memories, now that you've identified those, I'm going to ask that you take a few moments, just a couple of moments here, to sit with those experiences. And again, these aren't the deepest, darkest, most traumatic memories of your life. These are the challenges and experiences that do cause some discomfort, that do cause some suffering, but that you trust yourself to be with. And you might ask yourself whether you have given this pain some kind of purpose, some kind of meaning. How have you brought it forward into your life now, or the past lapse of time that has occurred between then and now? How have you used it as fuel for the good, fuel for your evolution and growth, fuel for your contribution and purpose in the world, fuel for what it is you truly desire to create and experience in your life? And if you found that you have not done that, take a moment to be with that and see how it can inform your experience now, how it can be made useful and purposeful, how it can benefit, how it can serve. I will share with you, sometimes the first thing that pops up in our head isn't the deepest, most purposeful alchemy that's available. So sometimes our mind, because it loves to solve problems, comes up with like the coolest thing or the most relevant thing right now or the most present thing. And then when you sit with it a little bit longer, either now or later in the course of your life, especially over the next couple of days, definitely the next couple of weeks, you might find the deeper correlation or correspondence, the deeper meaning and purpose that wants to come through for that. Because in truth, that pain or that memory or whatever it is, that part of you has something it wants to communicate, and there is a particular meaning or purpose that it wants to serve. So we can give it purpose all we want, but if we are doing the greater healing work, or the greater healing opportunity here is to really listen to that pain and see how it wants to serve or what it wants to be done. Maybe it's a way for us to heal and a quality we're growing into. Maybe it's something that we're offering somebody else. But that pain, that experience, that memory, that challenge has something to offer you uniquely of itself that isn't given to you by your mind, it's given to you by it. So I'll offer you an example, which feels a little vulnerable to share, but I do want to share an example here so you can see what I mean by what the mind might say, and it still can be a very heartfelt offering and a very heartfelt inspiration. It's something you can do. But then what that deeper upwelling might offer, and you can explore both of those if they're coming up for you and decide how you move forward. So I experienced something over the last couple of years that was very traumatic for me, and it's taken a long time to do that healing work and to determine how I can give my pain purpose and contribution. And my son was hospitalized. He was very ill and was hospitalized for about a week in his toddler days. And so at that time, it felt like he was very vulnerable, and we faced some of our worst fears and worst case scenarios. And it's still difficult for me to sit with, and it might be something that's forever difficult. However, I have found ways to be able to hold that and to be able to move forward anyway, and to be able to create a rich and meaningful life experience with it. You know, it may not ever go away. So at the time, what I thought of and what my mind was really inspired by, it's still very heartfelt, but maybe it wasn't the deepest core possibility for healing and alchemy, was at the time when we were in the hospital, we were stuck in a hospital room, unable to move around too much, very limited in terms of where we could go, what we could do. One of us, my son's parents, either myself or his father, had to be in the room with him. Most of the time it was both of us. Because of what he had was contagious, there was limited access, in and out, that kind of thing. And so we found ourselves just exhausted and tired and unsupported. Despite all the support we had over the phone and online, we simply didn't have that live in-person support that would have been really helpful. And so soon after this hospitalization experience, and I had been in yoga teacher training, I had a really what I thought was really awesome inspiration as to how I might be able to serve and support families, especially parents who are there for their children in a hospital setting. And what came about at that time was being able to offer yoga classes for parents or for those people who were admitted and stuck in the hospital for a period of time, and would benefit or could benefit from something like yoga. So at the time I had reached out to a couple people in the hospital. I was still very unstable or unsettled anyway. And so none of it panned out. I actually didn't hear back from anyone, and I wasn't in a place to like fight for something. It simply wasn't worth my while at that time. But that's an example of a way I could have created purpose with that pain and sort of given back and found a way to alchemize it and give it purpose, to own that experience and then use it. It didn't pan out. However, still an idea, still an inspiration, still something I would love to do. But for whatever reason, didn't happen, and that's fine. So fast forward to as I've been moving through this talk, and even my experiences thereafter, after the hospitalization and working with some of my teachers and mentors and support systems, and what I discovered was the deeper pain, so the deeper opportunity, the inspiration that was coming from the pain rather, was asking me to find ways for myself and for my son to live fully. So the deeper calling, the deeper gem, the deeper opportunity was for us to live more fully. And there are a lot of reasons I could share with you, and a lot of ways everything ties together, and you know, the beauty of all of it, how it all comes together, it all makes sense, right? It all falls into place. I could share all of that with you in terms of my history and my son's history and all the things. But to save us time, I won't go into that, but I will share that that was the deeper opportunity. It was for both of us to live fully, for me to step more into a place of newness and away from my comfort zone, and for me to allow that for my child, to give him greater opportunities to experience the world and greater adventure. And instead of being fearful about what could happen or those scary outcomes or whatever, having faced it anyway too, and seeing in living color what those worst case scenarios and what that fear looks like when it transpires, and that we came out on the other side. The deeper possibility and opportunity for us was creating a life where we could live more fully, each of us individually and together as a family. So that's an example, so you can see sort of some of the more superficial but still very heartfelt, very real inspirations that can come out of a painful experience or a painful memory, and out of that more difficult energy or denser energy, and how it can be alchemized. And both matter. Both contributions and inspirations will support that, to support that forward momentum. So whatever comes up for you is just right, but you might also trust that there could be a deeper possibility that comes up for you, even if it's not now and you're feeling like, gosh, there's something here but it's not landing. Trust that it will come. You've set the intention, you've created the space, the answer, the wisdom, the gem will be provided, so that you can find meaning through the experience. And you can do that in present time as you experience any kind of crisis in your present moment. You can find ways to create meaning in the moment. More often than not, in the middle of a crisis, we're navigating and managing our emotional experiences. And so, of course, if that's what your priority must be, to get centered or to perhaps spend time with loved ones, things like that, that's all natural and it's well and good. But in the moment, or even shortly after, we don't have to wait a year or 10 years or a lifetime to find meaning in our pain or to find meaning in crisis. We can do that now, and it's actually going to be the thread that supports us through that experience, so that we can hold on and move ourselves through. Because that segues into the next part of the talk, which is moving forward through crisis. So the work isn't just finding meaning to support the alchemy, to support being able to move forward, to support being able to release and let go of the old that's no longer relevant, that it's taught its lessons, right? That's part of finding meaning. It's given us and bestowed its gifts, finding meaning, and now we can let it go. And so we have that thread, we know what to do, we know what the meaning is, and we can just sit there and just grasp it like a rope, gently, loosely, and let it be our guide through the experience, through crisis. And moving forward is a hugely important variable for what we're experiencing right now, especially at the grander scale or on the world stage, because This is us moving through a huge growing pain, essentially. This is us taking the quantum leap. This is us releasing a lot of that old stuff at a societal level, at a global level. Everything's coming to the surface. A lot of things are coming to the surface anyway. Having to acknowledge that, decide if it's something we want to continue with, or if we want it to let it go and let it go by the wayside and choose and create anew. So that's happening collectively, globally, societally. It's also happening on an individual level. The difficulty that comes through an evolution like this, or through a transition like this, because we're still kind of in between worlds. We're not quite out of the old, right? A lot of things are sloughing away, and there's a lot of reactivity and a lot of difficulty around losing a lot of those old ways and old things and ways of living and being. But we're not quite in the new world, where it's the new earth that is founded in our truest values, and we've just risen everything up from the ground, and we're in a totally new, uplifted or enlightened, intentional, conscious world. Okay, that hasn't happened yet. We're in the transition. And so at this time, it's so important that we continue to move forward despite the emotional difficulty. Even though we are dealing with a lot of deep things coming up to the surface in our own experience and on the world stage, it's so important to get focused, again, giving that pain purpose, finding that meaning, so it can guide you through, out, and up. Okay? Because it's very easy in times like this to lose ourselves and all the stuff that's coming up and leaving. We can get trapped there, we can get stuck there, and some of the old thoughts or thought patterns that might be coming up, those old belief systems that might be coming up, those old emotional entanglements and narratives and stories that might be coming up, whether at, again, a societal or global level, or for us personally, it's very easy to get lost in that. So we're seeing a lot of separation and division and arguing and fighting right now, right? We're seeing a lot of that stuff superficially, but that's just representing our own experience and inner world too. And so it can kind of be easy to kind of get sucked up in that and get lost in it and then loop in it. And instead of letting it all go and letting it all be released so we can create something new, we're actually continuing to cycle in it. We can get stuck there. That's why it's so important to create this rope, this focus that can guide us through. And if we know what the meaning and we give this whole experience purpose, it can guide us through, up, and out. And so part of the work then is finding a way to move forward, even though it can be extremely difficult, even though it can be extremely challenging, even though all this subconscious shit is coming up, even though a lot of uncomfortable pain or emotions or sensations or whatever are coming up. It's important that we keep our eyes on the future, and that, yes, we might feel things, and that's part of the work and part of the process, is really being with ourselves and being with what comes up. However, our charge, our duty, our responsibility is to continue to move forward, to advance, to stay centered, to stay on path, even though and even while all this stuff continues to come up. And it can feel like, right, like a big, almost like tidal wave, and then it splashes or whatever, or the wave crests and breaks. And, can we remain steady and continue to advance? And I'm going to offer you a tool now. So we've already found some meaning, and if you didn't find it already in the moment that I provided, hopefully you paused the video so that you were able to gather as much as you could in terms of finding meaning in your experiences and giving it a purpose, a way to give to yourself or embody something new or give back. Now we move into the practical or experiential exercise of how we move forward. So I'm going to offer some tools and a way for you to be able to embody moving forward, like, oh, okay, cool, thanks, Errity. But what does it actually look like? And what it looks like is distancing yourself from your thoughts as best as you can, feeling your feelings, and then taking aligned and valued action, engaging in a value-guided behavior. I talk a lot about this in my book, Your Soul Figure Year. So that's an opportunity if you want to dive deeper into this process. If this video is not enough and you go into our group and it's just not enough and you need a little bit more support, you're welcome to explore that, which you can find here on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook watching this, you can find it, my profile, on my YouTube videos. It's fairly easily accessible. So your steps then for moving forward through crisis are distancing yourself from your thoughts, becoming the leader of your perceptual experience, deciding what you attend to and focus on, shifting your focus from destructive thoughts to helpful ones. We're not micromanaging our thoughts or trying to control our thoughts. We're simply stepping into pure awareness, the witness, the observer, and allowing the thoughts to pass by. If you find that you get hooked, start again, distance yourself. We'll go through an example in just a minute. If you're finding you get really hooked and you're finding that you are drowning in it, it might be time to seek out the help of a mentor, teacher, counselor, therapist, or so on. Okay? So you're going to distance yourself from your thoughts, then you're going to feel your feelings. Surrender. Allow the fear, allow the anger, allow the upset, allow the grief, the loss, the pain, whatever it is that needs to arise and be felt in your body, allow it. The good news is once you distance yourself from your thoughts, the emotions won't have so much meaning or the story wrapped around it or the narrative or whatever, such that it just becomes a sensation, right? It becomes an energy moving through your body. It doesn't mean anything. It's not attached to anything. It has nothing to do with the experience from your past or whatever. It just becomes, quote unquote, energy in motion, right? For emotion, becomes sensations. It's no longer, like your thoughts are no longer a reality, an objective reality. You realize that they're just constructs of your mind, so you can let them go pretty easily. That's that part of distancing yourself and becoming the leader of your perceptual experience. And then you're in a position to fully let go because those old stories really don't matter. Those thoughts can pass by. So then you're allowing yourself to feel, and you might cry. You know, you might find you have a lot of anger, so you need to go run or work out or dance or move, find a way to move that. Some of it might remain. Continue to move, continue to find ways to process and release that energy. And then most importantly, the final step is taking aligned action or value-guided action. And what that looks like is once you've dismantled yourself or detached or distanced yourself from the thought loop, the old fear system, the old narrative, and you've allowed yourself to feel all of your feelings, so the emotions have more or less gone by the wayside or been released, the thoughts have moved on, been carried on by the wind, right? Now you're sitting with yourself in as clear space as you can, and you're able to check in with yourself and ask yourself, how do I want to move forward from here? And that can tie back to the meaning or purpose that you had found already through your painful experience or through the crisis earlier. So if you know what that purpose or thread is, this is where you plug into that and you begin to serve that journey. You begin to affirm that energy. You begin to build a reality and life based in that foundation instead of the old energy, the old pain, the old subconscious influences, and all that stuff that's coming up and out. You're releasing it by letting go, distancing yourself from your thought forms, and you're allowing yourself to feel your feelings. You're not pushing them away anymore, keeping them suppressed and silenced in your body. You're allowing them to come forward so they too can carry on with their journey, and then you can carry on with yours because you now check in with your values or the purpose or meaning that you found, and you advance based on that. So let me give you an example. So based on what I've shared with you personally, so last year after my son was hospitalized and after I had uncovered what that deeper core gem was for me, the meaning for me was to live fully, to really engage with life, even though there were things that I thought were scary out there that could hurt or harm us or whatever, to move forward, to do anyway, okay? Feel the fear and do it anyway. And so that was a huge part of my journey after that. And so I'll give you an example of what that could have looked like for me, this process that I'm talking about. So let's say that at the time my son and I had an opportunity to go to a bounce house, okay, or a bounce park. This is a fictional example. I just don't have one that was real to the experience at the time. It's just not here right now, so I'm going to give you a fictional example, but you can imagine the themes are very much the same. You know, this is a very real thing that happened to us at some point in some form. So I'm giving you the function, the essence of it, even though I don't have a real example in this moment to give you. But let's say my son and I were invited to a bounce house. The very first thing that's going to come up for me are all of the fears about sick and hospitalizations and all the things that were part of the hospitalization and germs and this and that, okay? So that will be the first thing that's going to come up for me, and I could be gripped in fear, swallowed whole by this shadowy energy or this ghost from the past that was actually very real for me, and I was still very much in it. I was traumatized and needed a lot of support to get out of that whirlpool, to find myself out of it, to be able to look back. So if you are in a position of trauma, get the support to be able to do this work. Don't try navigating it on your own unless you feel fully empowered and available to do so. So let's say we've been invited to the bounce house. Here we are. I'm having all of the demons are coming up, right, to have their say. The first step, I distance myself from my thoughts. I might say something like, oh, this is trauma talking again. Oh, this is my fear talking again. Oh, I'm not fearful. Fear is fearful. So I'm finding ways to distance myself. So I'm not in it with all of it circling and swallowing me, right? I've now separated myself from my thoughts. I can look at them objectively and I can see that, oh, this isn't an objective reality. This is just the story that stems from my trauma history or stems from my conditioning or my childhood or whatever it is that we're observing. This is just the programming that is a part of that experience. This isn't real and it's not present. So finding a way to distance myself from my thoughts. Again, fear is fearful. I'm not fearful. Oh, this is trauma, or that's none of my business. I used that for a little while. You know what? Thank you, mind, but that's none of my business. That's none of my business. And it wasn't, because it wasn't present or relevant. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, surrender and avail myself to the feelings underneath and entangled with these thoughts. So that would be grief, loss, terror, those anguish, despair, the void, extreme loneliness, because we tend to feel so alone in our pain. Allow myself to feel all of that, and I could, because they were no longer entangled and stuck with the thoughts that I distanced myself from. And so these were now just energies, these were now just sensations that didn't have a story or a narrative or anything wrapped around it. I had nothing to fear. It was just, oh, there's this little part in my belly that feels really hot and feels very overwhelming, or gosh, there's tears coming up and I'm just wailing, and it's just me crying. This is just me feeling, just my solar plexus feeling really fluttery, right? And so I can find ways to describe my sensations and emotional experiences, again, to give it a little bit more distance and to allow these energies, these experiences to have their moment and to flow and to carry on. Then after that feeling opportunity would pass, then I could check in and I could say, okay, what was it that I'm attending to? What is my purpose? What's the meaning here? What's the opportunity? How can I make a value aligned or value guided choice? Oh, that's right. I had committed to living fully. And so I'd say, what is the choice here? If I've committed to living fully, what is the choice? And the choice is to go to the bounce house, right? To accept the invitation and to advance. So that's a personal example, a micro example as to the work that we are all doing right now. So that is a personal example as to the work that we are all charged with right now on an individual and collective level, so that we can find meaning in our pain and crisis and continue to move forward, because this new earth is not going to build itself. It's going to require us to be able to sit with our pain and carry it as we go, to do the healing work as we go. There won't always be a retreat or a sanctuary to be able to hold ourselves. And if that's what you need, I encourage you to do that. I also know that we are empowered, capable, resilient individuals who can heal as we move forward. And so that is what I wanted to provide you with today, so you could have the tools to be able to navigate this era and the eras to come that may be challenging, but that you're still able to live the life that you truly want and to be able to create the world that we are all looking forward to and creating. Thank you.